afternoon. Hi. Being the speaker at 1:30 after a long day already in a warm room is like the kiss of death. So I'm gonna try to be a dancing bear up here. I move around. I'm gonna stress our cameraman here, but I promised that I would not stand in front of the screen. Dottie, Deremo, shameless plug. I've been in my own consulting business for now 3.5 years. Prior to that, I was the president and CEO of Hospice of Michigan, a $90 million not-for-profit company. Before that, I was in healthcare in Henry Ford Health System as the chief nursing officer in the Detroit medical system. I've done consulting in Russia, Ukraine, Greece, and England. So I have a very eclectic background. Based on that, you're wondering, what does a 100-year-old woman have to say to hockey aficionados in this room? So I figured I better give you my street cred in hockey. My first memory of hockey was back in the 50s when that was our TV. Anybody who's old enough to remember the cabinet that was this big and the screen that was this big? What I remember most is my dad cheering, and then when we watched the Lions, my dad swearing like a sailor because he was a sailor in World War II, and my mother saying, "Burton Eugene Eubank, don't say those words in front of the children." "Yes, dear. Sorry, children." So that was my first experience with hockey with the production line. This is my husband and I. We had the privilege of spending an afternoon with Gordie Howe at a fundraiser and sitting on a park bench at the Henry Ford Museum on a beautiful summer day as we talked about hockey. His wife had just passed, and how proud he was of her, and how she was the real brains behind the operation because she was the one that was focused on making sure they got paid right. He said, "I would have played for a case of beer." And my husband said, "Well, tell me, what was it like throwing that elbow all the time?" He said, you want to know?" And he took that lovely sport coat off, and he rolled up his sleeve, and he had a callus baseball on the end of that elbow. And he said, "That's what you get from elbowing all these years." Now, to sum up my street cred, I am here today, and I am missing Mitch Albom's premiere of Hockey the Musical. Now, that's premiering in the Olympic, I think at Fox Theater in Detroit tomorrow evening during our banquet. And these are the hit songs that we are going to be missing. "God is a Canuck," "When You Are a Wing," "Put on Skates," and "Kill Baseball." So, I don't know if that's enough for this group, but that's the best I could come up with. What I'd like to do with our time together is go through pregame warm-up, part 1, the rules of today's game, and what I'd like you to think about here in this room, the pregame warm-up, part 2, and then we're going to really get into, you're going to have the opportunity to anonymously evaluate the MAHA board's effectiveness. Because part of what we really are looking to do is how to make MAHA more effective going into the future. And I'm going to, in that pregame warm-up, tell you why it's important that we look at that as an organization. The playbook we're using for strategic planning, an instant replay of the work that we've done to date, and finally, we're going to be getting your input because you have these little audience response clickers that you're going to actually have a chance to vote. Is everybody ready to play the game? All right. Pre-game warm-up part 1. How many in this room believe if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Okay. How many of you that believe if it ain't broke, don't fix it came in a horse and buggy to this meeting? Yeah. The fact is, and part of my job as an outside person, I do consulting with very big companies, for-profit companies. I have publicly traded companies on the New York Stock Exchange as clients, and very small not-for-profit organizations. My smallest not-for-profit organization is a free clinic in Pontiac, and a lot of folks in between in the not-for-profit organization space and in the for-profit company space. And every one of them realizes that if they don't change, they are not going to either be in business or not have the same impact. Oy vey, said what my Jewish friends would say. So this is why I'm talking about, did you come with a horse and buggy? No, the fact is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We would never have an automobile. But for those of you that have been in the automobile sector, and for all of us who drive, this is, the horse and buggy was really invented 500 years ago and had a 500-year reign of supremacy. And then it got improved to the first automobile in 1893, and then Uber, 2009. Anybody use Uber here? A few of you have. The projection is by 2020, there'll be 10 million self-driving cars on the roads in America. Uber is actually having to transition away from drivers to self-driving cars because it's going to be less expensive. And they will have more control. And for the young folks, the millennials, they want to play video games or do something else or sleep. They don't want to be driving, and they don't want to pay for a car. It's too expensive to have a car sitting in the garage when you only need it certain times. So in their minds, self-driving cars and Uber is a very smart investment. For us, it's going, say what? Who would have ever thunk? This can't possibly be. But if you look at the speed of change and how quickly that change has happened, that change is coming to your theater, to the MAHA theater, because you have competition. You didn't have it a while back, but you have it now. And if you don't change, you're not going to be able to capture what that competition is already capturing. And so Pogo said, for those of you that have been around since the year of the flood, Pogo is a cartoon character. He said, we have met the enemy, and he is us. Our success is actually our Achilles heel to change. That's part one, pre-game warm-up. So just kind of giving you a big kind of frame of what's happening in the world and why here in Michigan, here at MAHA, we are not insulated from what all is happening. What I'd like you to do now for this segment, because being skeptical is an important part of being a human being, I'd like you to kind of use these rules for today. The world does not run around you. We tend to be locked into our positions. I'd like you to begin to put your MAHA hat on, not my association hat, my rink hat, my coach hat, my parent hat, but MAHA as a total organization. I call this going to the dark side. We tend to get locked into positions because we believe what we believe, which is great. But if you think about what you believe, it's like being on the light side of the moon. That's the world that you see. But that is not all the world. Somebody else who you are in conflict with, that's their view. They see the other side of the moon. So learning to listen and ask, why do you believe that? Whoa, okay. Why do you believe that is an important component to working through issues around change and negotiation, not only in your MAHA life, but in your work life and in your family life. Every one of us is wired differently. So if I'm a toaster and you're a coffee pot, my being mad at you for not making toast is probably not a smart idea. And you being mad at me, or you're, let's see, am I a coffee pot or are you a coffee pot? Just testing. You're a coffee pot, I'm a toaster. All right. So in essence, we are wired very differently, and we get mad at one another because someone else is different than we. And in essence, we are all very different. And getting everyone's perspective, which this meeting is all about, is what's important for change. The problem that I see in this group is that you are all sports people. And when you are playing a hockey game, the goal is to win the game, right? It's all about competition. You want to win the game, you want to win the district, you want to win the championship. That's competition. And we bring to our meetings competition. I'm going to win on my position. The problem with that is that whenever you're in any negotiation situation, whether we're talking about business or hockey, MAHA, or your family life, you're always negotiating two things. And you don't think you are negotiating two things. It's more than winning the game. You are negotiating the issue, and you are negotiating the relationship. You're negotiating the issue or the relationship. And the challenge you have is, do I be hard or soft? And the question is, hard or soft on what? The issue or the people? Because this is what happens in most negotiations situations, and that's what you do at MAHA. In your association meetings, in every meeting that you're in, you are in a negotiating situation. And so when you are in competition, that's a win-lose. If you win on your position and make the other guy or gal lose, you lose the relationship. Have you ever been in a situation where you lost and you felt like you had Mack truck tire tracks on your face? That residual of resentment, you pocket. And you're going to get that person, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not the next day, but when some day comes around when you have the chance to have the upper hand, you're going to dig that in. So when you win on your position, you're automatically losing on the relationship, and you're going to lose down the line. If they win on their position, you maintain the relationship, but you're not real happy about it, and you're going to pocket that, and you're going to make sure that you get them the next time around, that you have the opportunity and the upper hand. If you compromise, we all say, well, let's compromise. That's a lose-lose. I'll lose a little, you lose a little on your positions, and we both kind of still like each other, but we're both kind of resentful. What the Harvard Negotiating Project has done and is helping people with negotiation is really look at what's called the third best way, the elegance of the third best way. Whatever is your position, behind that position, you have a number of interests, and the person you're negotiating with has a number of interests, and those interests may be compatible. But most meetings stop at, this is what I believe, and you fight about those two positions. instead of allowing all ideas to get out on the board, and then begin to work backward and say, what would be a great agreement for everybody involved? What could we, from principle, accept? And then you begin to look at all those ideas and narrow them down to those that meet those principles. And in that way, you have the elegance of the and. In business, it's not quality or cost, it's both. We want quality and cost if we buy a pizza or whatever, or a car or whatever else we want. We want both. We want the best bang for the buck. And the auto companies, for example, have had to really figure out how they're going to produce quality and to keep the cost low. Because if they don't, somebody else figures that out. So it's an and relationship, not an either or relationship. And part of this process of what I'm trying to help this group, which has very strong, passionate ideas, but they're not all the same. Does that surprise you? Surprise! Is to be able to begin to say, it's not this position or this position, but how do we look at the elegance of the and? So pre-game warm-up part 2, that was the rules of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to use that. Your success is your danger. You have 50,000 members, right? We've looked at some of the data, and your 50,000 members have stayed pretty stable, but you have a lot of aging members. Sorry, I'm in that group too. And the number of youth and younger members has, in some years, been smaller coming in. So what does that mean to your long-term state? If you're not capturing as many youth, your membership is stable for today, but that doesn't mean that that's what you have tomorrow. You're a premier association for USA Hockey. But if your membership shrinks and Wisconsin does better, or another state within the United States does better, what does that do to your position in USA Hockey? So it's not just today, it's really thinking out for the future. And the problem with success is complacency. It ain't broke, don't fix it. Arrogance, we're great, we drink our own Kool-Aid. We don't see what's coming. And inflexibility of not wanting to change. And these are the typical responses to change. In a biological perspective, if you get a virus or any kind of change, your body attacks it like antibodies. And that's what we do in organizations, is we attack anybody that comes up with a great idea. Not always, but very frequently. We have the attack of the cave dwellers. Do you know what cave dwellers are? Constantly against virtually everything. Now, are there any cave dwellers in MAHA?
Trick question, Dottie.
Pardon?
Is that a trick question?
Is that a trick question?
Yeah.
I just asked you to noodle on that. Are there cave dwellers? We don't like change. And this is what happened to Western Union in terms of change. They said that the telephone was basically inherently of no value. And what do we know about phones today? Well, they rapidly grew. The mobile phone started in 1980. Anybody here have one of those phones in your car that you didn't need to go to a gym because they were so heavy you were lifting your own weights? That was 1980. Do you know that when the smartphone came in? 2001, 16 years ago. And now we're watching videos and TV and sports games on our smartphone. Who's watching a sporting event on their smartphone? Anybody that's done that? Uh-huh. Right now? Yeah, in the middle of this meeting, I'm sure. So you're I'd be doing it. So we figured out, we humans are pretty smart, and we have figured out how to do that. So what does this mean to MAHA? Okay, the AAU has come into being. You have other sports like kill baseball. That's not metaphorical. I mean, you know, folks play baseball during the summer. There's not all the challenges for ice. I sat in on the goalie development meeting, just the previous meeting, and folks were talking about, well, when these kids are available to be able to get goalie education is prime time for the rinks. So rinks they want to make them get up at dark 100 and be in at the rink at 6 o'clock in the morning. And these kids have school. And then you wonder why you've only got 2 kids that show up. Well, other sports do not have that. Soccer is a huge competitor of you. What do you need for a soccer game?
Grass and ball.
A field, you need some grass. You probably need some, if you're going to be really cool, you need some knee pads. You might have some special shoes. And if you're lucky, you're going to have a uniform. Bing, bang, boom, you're done. There's tons of soccer games everywhere. It's a cheap entry for parents who want their kids to get into sports. It's a cheap entry to get girls engaged in sports and competition. They don't have the same kind of challenges that they have in baseball and soccer. Girls do not have the same challenges that they do have in hockey and football. And 50% of our population, surprise, surprise, are girls. That's a whole big market that, you know, you've developed a little bit, but not that much. And all these other sports are going, yeah, baby, come on down. We know how to engage you and bring you in and utilize you. That's your competition. As you begin to watch your membership erode, what's that going to mean to you? Now, as Gordy would say, and so I have what would Gordy do? He says, my philosophy is never start talking about it, or the past, because 90% of what follows will be negative. So he didn't talk about the past. On improving, there's always something in the game you wish you would have done different. That's why players improve, because they learn from what they did before. They might have been guessing before, but now they know. Continuous improvement is key, but not enough. The horse and buggy, if I had a buggy factory, I could continuously improve myself out of business. You must not only continuously improve, you must innovate. That means radically change, and we don't like change. But for MAHA to be as strong today as it wants to be in 5 years or 10 years, you must do both. Improve what you're doing today and innovate and do some very unique things. Your structure is not designed for you to innovate. Your voting system is not designed for you to innovate. I'm just being honest that's my job, is to tell you how I see it. Your voting structure is designed to stop innovation and maintain the status quo, which was probably a very important thing to do when you began as MAHA. But it is an Achilles heel to you today, because these other organizations that I showed don't have the same bureaucracy, infrastructure, and are able to change quickly, which is what young people are looking for. It's what parents are looking for. In the goalie development group, that's what I heard from parents. How are you going to help my kid who loves hockey and is the one that shows up at 6 a.m. but it's all by themselves. And in the meantime, I'm trying to make sure that he does well in school as well, or she does well in school. How well are we really listening to our customers, our players, and our parents, and designing what's best based on their needs versus what we think they need? So I'm just throwing these things out for you to really consider. And finally, Wayne Gretzky talked about what made him successful. And many of you have heard the quote, but this quote is important in life, at MAHA, and in business. I skate to where the puck is going to be, not to where it is. So as you begin to look at the issues of strategic planning and change, think about not where the puck is today, but where the puck is going to be. And how are you going to be relevant in 5 and 10 years? So with that, we're going to do the audience response system. This is a very honest look. And since nobody knows who you are, you're going to be able to vote. And we're using what's called turning point technology. I'm going to go through this, and we're going to do a couple test questions. And then what we're going to do is actually go through some real questions. Is everybody ready? Can I have a hallelujah? All right, thank you. This is your clicker, and what you'll see is you've got a lot of different buttons, but all you need to know about is 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and maybe 5E. Are we all on the same page? I will ask you a question, and you will put in the number that best responds to what you think. So if you thought the question was a 1A, you could press 1 or A. You can press as many times as you want. The receiver knows who you are, but once the countdown has stopped, it is your last response that is recorded. So if you change your mind, you can change your mind, but once the cutoff, the polling is done, it's Kaputski. Okay? Is everybody ready? Test question. I'm not Catholic, but I got to do this because this is my first time out. I'm kind of like the canary in the coal mine. You're going to be using this the rest of the day.
Is it already on?
It's already on. It's good to go, I hope. Okay. Question. How long have you been involved with MAHA? 1 year, 2 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15 years, or 16 plus years? Go. Okay, polling is stopped. And what we have is 9% of you have been here for a year, 16% 2 to 5, 31% 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15 years is 20%, and 16 years is 23%. Actually, all this data that's up here is going to be captured and used going forward. All right, second question. Everybody ready to rock and roll? How many MAHA summer meetings have you attended? Polling is closed. So a number of you have, over 50% have attended 1 to 5 meetings. Then it tails off from there. Is everybody all good with the clicker? Yes, all right. Come on. All right. Now this is voting for real related to actually MAHA effectiveness, the board's effectiveness. Polling is open. The MAHA board leadership question 1, the organization has a clear direction and everyone knows, that's a spelling error, knows what it is and we all work toward it. A is strongly agree, B is agree, C is disagree, D is strongly disagree. 30 seconds. It's like watching YouTube, isn't it? Okay. Polling is closed. Nope. And this is what you said. Basically, you're in agree or disagree. And there's more disagree than agree. So you've got 31% that say MAHA is effective and board leadership is effective, and more than 70% that says, 66% that says no. So a third say, yeah, it's great, and 2/3 say no, don't like it. Okay. Question 2, MAHA embraces a philosophy of continuous improvement and change. A, strongly agree. B, disagree, agree. C, disagree. D, strongly disagree. Polling is open. Okay. Again, you have a little over a third that agrees that you embrace a philosophy of continuous improvement and change. 2/3 of you say no, that's not the case. That's a pretty strong indictment. Question 3, MAHA is continuously assessing the change in your sports and adapting our programs to those changes. A, strongly agree. B, agree. C, disagree. D, strongly disagree. Here are the results. A little bit more agreement here, 44% on assessing programs. But again, more than 50% are saying that you're not adapting to the changes that you need to be adapting to. Those of you that are in the board, I think you need to really look at this seriously, because I think this really tells you that you must start changing, because if you do not, you are going to lose members. Question 4, rate the overall effectiveness of the MAHA board itself, the actual board. And what you have is highly effective, effective, somewhat effective, ineffective. So the majority say somewhat effective. This is on a 4-point scale for those of you that are like statistics. We did not do a 5-point scale because everybody wants to go to the middle. So in essence, folks are either above the line or below the line. And even though this is at 71% somewhat effective, that means you're below average. Because average is 2.5. No, average is 2. Anything above 2. Okay, next question. We're almost done with this section. Rate the level of committee and involvement, commitment and involvement of most board members. That should be commitment. Sorry about the typo. Polling is open.
Can we ask a question?
Sure.
Because we're wondering, what board are you defining as board members? Are you thinking of the executive board, or are you thinking MAHA's board as a whole?
MAHA's board as a whole. Do you want to go back to do that?
Because I think a lot of us assumed you were talking about the executive board. That's all, I was just wondering.
Well, maybe I'll tell you what. We'll do another question. Do you want to have a question on the executive board as well?
That's a George question, not a Julie question. Sorry, George. That's what you look for.
Well, I think what you have here is you have close to 50%.
I'm done. You should just redo that one with the new definition.
Okay, let's redo this one. And polling is now open. and this is on the MAHA Executive Board. Okay, here are the results. Uh, 26% say effective, 53% say somewhat effective, 21% say ineffective. We voted for this, and then let's go to this the last question. Do you find your involvement with the organization to be a fun and rewarding experience? A is always, B mostly, C somewhat, D not at all. Polling has started. Okay. So most of you like what you do, and 10% are here and hate that you're here. So, whoa. If you raise your hand, just so I know who to stay out of what. Okay. All right, we're going to go to the next section, but before we do, you've been sitting on your gluteus maximi for a little too long. Everybody up. So in essence, if you're talking about a plan, this is what you need to do. Relook at your mission and values and something called a SOAR assessment. From a mission perspective, you guys had a purpose, but you really didn't have a mission. You have strong beliefs, but you didn't have solid values. Thinking about a SOAR assessment, not S-O-R-E, not something that hurts, but SOAR, S-O-A-R, strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. And what that means is most folks are used to a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which is much more of a retrospective look. And a SOAR assessment is a much more prospective, what do we want to be? How do we want to reinvent ourselves? So let me do an instant rewind, and you're going to have a chance to vote again. When we went through the original group and then we looked at the winter meeting, strengths are what can we build on? Opportunities are what are our stakeholders asking for? And there's a lot of stakeholders in MAHA. You have players, parents, coaches, volunteers, rinks, and associations. Aspirations, what do we care deeply about? And results, how do you know that you're succeeding? How do you measure your success? If you're not measuring it, you don't care about it. In terms of strengths, the results from that group, and then they were reiterated at the winter meeting. What the group said is that you have a lot of strengths related to volunteers, fun for kids, experience in diversity, an ADM program, that you have the best interest of kids in mind, that you have a great coaching program, you have 50,000 members that love the game, that many people believe hockey is life and hockey for life. You have an organized structure with governance, executive board, and enforcement. You have a good product. You really focus on youth, and you're fiscally stable and responsible. That your affiliation with USA Hockey is strong. You support THFF, your state tournaments, lots of ice is available, support of the NHL, implementation of the Growing Girls and Women's program. You have a strong abuse prevention and screening practice, and practices disciplinary process and player safety. Now the question is that this is what the winter meeting said. Do you agree? Do you strongly agree with those findings? Do you agree with the findings? Do you disagree or strongly disagree? And polling is now open. You said mostly that you agree with the strengths. Okay. The next look at the SOAR assessment. This is opportunities. what are our players looking for? And what the groups said is that the players are looking for more support and communication, good leadership, fair referees, fun with as much time as possible in the game, safe environment, good coaching with background screening and coaching education, less rules, having some time off rather than a year-round commitment, and better organizational structure. Do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with the findings? Polling is open now. There you go. Looks like most of you strongly agree. Parents are looking for reduced cost, some time away from the game, college scholarships, and getting their child into the NHL. Sounds like they're speaking the truth. Emphasis on the sport and life lessons, development-driven organization, flexibility with travel hockey, less rules, and to be part of any association they wish to join. So the question is, do you agree? Strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree with these findings related to parents and what they're looking for? Okay, we're almost done. Looks like, again, most of you agree. So it sounds like there's a fairly unified approach to this assessment. Coaches, they want education, less hours spent in education. Sounds perfectly rational to me. Okay, autonomy with less overall accountability and responsibility, more goalies to be paid, interactions with the kids, giving back to the sport, and more local flexibility. Do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with these findings? This time we are going to repeat for only the coaches. Do you strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree with the findings so far in the SOAR assessment related to coaches? Only coaches vote. Okay, here are the results. So it looks like there's consistency.
Can you see the actual number of votes on both of them to compare?
I can see, yes, I can see the number.
75 and 30 people.
It's 47 for this one, and in the previous slide, let me go back to the previous slide and see how many people voted, just to make sure we're all kosher, as my Jewish friends would say. No. For parents, it looks like there's only 74 responses. Coaches, 47 responses. It looks like only 47 both times. And in the first results, I saw more than 70. So, George, I'm not sure what's going on with the clickers. When the first round, we had like 77, unless a lot of you have left. I know it's personal. Let's try volunteers and see what happens. It's the only way I can try to find out how many of the clickers are working. What are our volunteers looking for? Training, support, social life, to be wanted, to be able to help, and to be active, connection and relevance, to be paid rather than volunteer hours for some jobs, and not to. And to be considered a volunteer, but without having to do anything. That's what you said, I'm sorry. Okay, let's see what happens with the polling responses for volunteers. 74 responses here. And it looks like for volunteers, there's kind of a mixture. About 50%, a little over 50% say yes, that's okay, but About a third of you disagree with that. Associations. This is what associations are looking for, and I'm not going to read them all. Can you all see back there, or do I need to read them? Here's the voting. Again, do you agree? You strongly agree, agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? There's 80 responses on this one so far. Polling is closed. So a lot of agreement related to what associations are looking for. Now this is rinks and arenas. You can see up there what everybody said, and then the question is, do you strongly agree with the findings for rinks and arenas? Okay, it looks like there's pretty strong agreement that that's what rinks are looking for. Now we're on to aspirations. What do we care deeply about? Providing good product, player fun, getting it right, and doing the right thing. National status, the future of MAHA, physical and mental development of youth and players, excellent officiating, no lawsuits. I put that back up at the top. Competitive teams, organized state champions, successful arenas, increase in girls and women's hockey, better coaching, better disciplinary action, better plan for the future. More organized structure that is the right structure, not just structure for structure's sake. This is an interesting one. Creating an environment that ignites character building and lifelong lessons, making hockey affordable, less rules, more flexibility, player safety, etc. You should be able to read the rest of those. All right. Lots of agreement here. This is the final. Bringing it on home. Not the final vote, but the final related to the SOAR assessment. How do we know we are succeeding? And these are the results, that if we have increased interest and increased volunteers, happy parents with good feedback, respect at the national level, player retention, member growth, players having fun, no injuries, and retention of coach, players, and volunteers. My question is, do you measure, do you collect data on these issues? Or do you just kind of talk about them? You may begin to think about how to really measure your effectiveness is to begin to measure these things and look at them on a regular basis. How are you doing on these benchmarks? Here's some more. That the board is on the same page, that we get more draft for college, semi-pro, and NHL teams, a thinner guidebook. Well, I've got a revenue stream. You could probably start the MAHA gym and use the guidebook for bench pressing. That was, for any of you that take that seriously, that was a joke on my part. Don't. Have an end product that's actionable, all programs full, in all associations, 100% retention, increase coach numbers, number of USA Hockey Awards to Michigan, and finally, financial health. Okay. Okay. This is the purpose that you've had for many years, and we have not changed that purpose. But we looked at a working draft of a mission, and I'm going to have you vote on that. This is the final piece. We're going to be looking at voting on the mission, the values, the vision, strategic themes, and then you get to evaluate me. So, and then we'll bring it on home. So the working draft of the mission states, the Michigan Amateur Hockey Association is the premier amateur sports organization in Michigan, which develops players in the sport of ice hockey to the best of their ability in a fun and safe environment. The question is, and your mission is your reason for being. Your mission doesn't change. How you apply your mission will change from over time, but the mission itself is really a foundational principle. Do you strongly agree with this statement, disagree, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? Polling is open. looks like there's a lot of agreement. So I think that from a board perspective, you can assume that this is no longer, you might want to talk about and act on this, but that maybe instead of calling it a working draft, that it becomes your mission that you can put on your website. Values, the working draft, and what the group decided was, I think, a really cool idea is that these values should happen from the board level right down to the ice. From the board to the ice, MAHA will deliver excellence in everything we do, deliver valuable programs that are affordable for our members, sportsmanship, teamwork, and respect for each other, a fun, safe environment for our players, growth of our players as people and hockey players that leads to growth of MAHA. Do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with these values? Polling is open. Looks like there's lots of agreement here. So I think you can assume, again, for those of you that are on the board, that you could remove the working draft and use these going forward. Finally, the working draft of the vision. MAHA will be the best amateur ice hockey association nationally for lifelong player fun, physical and personal development, and player safety. In essence, this is what you would like. If you could be the best you could be, this is what you would like. Polling is open. Okay. I think you're good to go. And then from an instant replay, what I'd like to do, this is the final section. As I said, my goal is to get you out early. So we're looking at the beginning of taking note vision and values and beginning to say, what would a working draft for a plan look like, not just for strategies. We've talked about the foundation, and now we're going to look into what our strategic themes. Strategic themes are, in essence, pillars of what you want to accomplish, and they don't change for 3, 5, maybe 6 years, but how you get there changes over time. And these are the themes that the group worked on. Excellence in everything we do, outstanding programs at the lowest cost, affordable cost, teamwork, sportsmanship, and respect for each other in the game, providing a fun, safe environment for players, and growth of our players as people and hockey players that leads to growth to MAHA. These are the areas that we want to begin to build plans around to move closer to what our vision is. So this is in addition to the questions that we had about mission, vision, value. Based on those strategies, do you believe that MAHA should take action to improve based on those strategies? Do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? Okay, I think you feel that you need to move forward, and there's just 3% who don't think that MAHA should take action. So I think that's a strong vote of confidence to the board to move forward. And then there is nothing wrong with the status quo. So meaning, let's not change. Do you strongly agree, disagree? Strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? Polling is open. Looks like 92% say, let's change. And there is 8% that say, let's not change. Let's keep it as it is. So I think you have an overwhelming referendum that you need to move forward and you need to change. I would suggest then, going forward, as the board and the executive committee of the board, executive board, are looking at and proposing changes, those that are resisting this data needs to be brought forward because what you have is a referendum among your membership for change. And so for those who are locked in their positions that don't want change, you're going against the tide, and I think it's important to know that. Finally, I want to participate in MAHA's strategic planning initiative. Yes, no, don't have the time. Polling is open. We're then going to have some opportunity for people to ask questions. It looks like some of you don't have the time, but a lot of you would like to be involved in some way. And that's something that as we begin to move forward we've done a first draft of a potential operating plan, but we wanted to make sure that you all buy into the mission, vision, values. We're almost done. We're going to bring it on home. Any ahas from the day, any lessons learned, questions, or comments you may have, you can either come up to the mic or ask the question from where you're at, and for purposes of the transcription, I will repeat the question back. Anybody have anything they want to say? Except it is 3:06 and we are cooked and ready to serve, and we would like to get done. Does anybody have anything they'd like? Yes, George.
So just for the good of the group, how do we take from where the things that we've learned or the things that we think we know, and how are we going to move forward from there?
Is that a question of me?
Yeah, to actually create a plan.
Okay. For the good of the group, how do we move from here? I think the first thing that is really good is you have a referendum for change. And I think you need to start holding that as a mantra, and holding each other and your committees, your associations, the board and the executive board accountable for that. Secondly, there seems to be approval of the strategies, that those seem to be right. So those are big, high-level principles. Thirdly, what has happened is that group that I told you, we had created kind of a first draft of an operating plan, meaning what are we going to do in the next 18 months, and thought, wait a minute, we really need to cycle back and make sure that we have enough input from a large constituency. When you've got 50,000 members, you need to make sure that you really are gaining that constituency. We are now going to, tomorrow afternoon, there's a 3-hour session for the planning group to re-look at the work that we did, and then based on the work today, to say, what does that mean, and what would we want to do in the next 18 months to get us closer to that vision? What can be some very specific steps that we can take to get us closer to that vision? And we will be coming up with a first draft of an operating plan, meaning that there'll be what's called an operational goal related to a strategy. There'll be deliverables, what we want to deliver in the next 18 months, what time frame, who's going to be responsible, meaning what committee, who's going to lead it, who needs to have involvement, so there's going to be a responsibility and accountability chart. How do we measure if we've achieved it or not? How do we measure success? And then a very specific action plan. Just because we have a draft doesn't mean that it's a tablet that Moses brought down from the mountain and cannot be changed. What will probably then circulate is a draft of that plan, and there'll be some input. But at some time, this is my recommendation to you as your consultant, you have to draw a line in the ice, because you can tweak a plan from now until a week before Thanksgiving when the farmer walks in the yard. So at some time you have to draw a line in the ice and say, it's almost there. Perfect, as Aristotle said, perfect is the enemy of good. You will never have a perfect plan. But if you can get, as you know, in the hockey stick, when you're wanting to hit a puck, there's a sweet spot in that stick. So if you get within that sweet spot, if you're 80% there, it's good enough. From a quality improvement perspective, if you look at this would be improvement, this line. This would be effort. It takes 20% effort to get 80% improvement. It takes 80% effort to get the final 20% improvement. That's called a Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. And in essence, if you're 80% there, I'd say go with it. You're going to need to have, in my opinion, a cutoff date that we're going to get input for X amount of months, and then we're going to go. You can't have 50,000 members that everybody's going to be happy. But if you have 80% of those 50,000 members, you're in the right direction. Yes, sir.
I have a question for George and for you. I see half the exec board is sitting out here not involved, and I see half in here. Is the leadership on board with making these changes that all these people disagree to? So why don't you pull the exec board and see what their thought process is?
They were involved in this part of the process. This is the third time they would have seen this.
Okay.
So that's probably why half of them are out there.
Okay.
But we've had these very frank discussions. As some of the board members will let you know, I am a very direct person. So.
I mean, I stand here, I hope we're not wasting our time in this. That's what my biggest.
But Dottie, we see it from out here that our exec board is broke. I mean, it's been discussed already in the 2 meetings.
Then maybe let's bring the exec board in here.
I mean, you see the few sitting here and George in back. Where's the rest of them?
Could you bring the exec board in here and tell them that they're being asked to come into the meeting, please?
Want me to do that?
Yes, please. Yes, ma'am.
I want a show of hands of people in the room who actually attended the winter meeting.
Can I have a show of hands of people that attended? Oh, so this is a repeat for a lot of people. Okay. Is the exec board on its way? Okay, thank you. There are some chairs up front. I know it's like church, but I wanted as many of the executive board here because the question was, there's some skepticism in the room. What folks have seen is half of the executive board are in here and half are not. And there's concern that there is not buy-in by the executive board to change and move forward because there is overwhelming referendum for change within this group. So that's the question, and I'm just throwing it out to the board. I said that you were all involved in the process, but there seems to be a concern that in the executive board that there is, this will go away kind of like the flavor of the month, and we can go back to the way it was. Is that the feeling of the board, executive board? I guess it's my job to call you out, so. Anybody want to speak to that? Go ahead.
I can say, I think
You want to stand up and go to the mic, please? Thanks. For purposes of our video guy.
I think I can speak for some on our executive board. We most definitely hear our membership and our directors, and we most definitely want to make change. We are here. It's most of our second full-time job, and we all have a passion for hockey, and we want to make the change. So I want you guys to know that you are being heard, and we do want to make a difference. It's going to take all of us to do it, and I hope the 68% that clicked yes, they want to be involved shows up at our meeting tomorrow. And I thank you very much, every one of you, for being here, taking time out of your schedule, giving us the feedback that is critical for us to make our program successful. And I hope that we can keep working together and moving forward and changing the face of MAHA. It's a great sport, and I know all of you guys, it's your passion as well. And it's a pleasure to work with you guys. Thank you. Thank you for coming and participating.
I commend MAHA for hiring you to change.
Well, thank you. That's a little embarrassing, but I have to feed that back for our videographer. This kind lady, who I'm going to pay $20 later, said that she commends MAHA for hiring me because if by hiring someone like me, it means they're serious about wanting change.
My battery died.
Praise the Lord. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? In summary, what I've tried to do is get, comments, I'm sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, these guys want to get out of here. A year ago, I stood up in front of the body and I said MAHA was broken. And it is, and it was, and it still is. However, this is probably the most positive step I have seen MAHA take in the 11 years I've been involved. So to comment on what you said, I'm encouraged, I am very encouraged that we are going to make the right kind of strides that we have to. But I will tell you, the executive board not being here is one problem. I'm looking around and every board of directors in this state needs to step up and should be here. Every association president and member that is here should be in this meeting because it is, the executive board can only guide. We are the ones that have to do the work. So I challenge not only the executive board, but I challenge everybody else in the state to come to the table and let's make MAHA great.
In summary, you have a wonderful organization, a long, proud history. You are passionate about hockey, and you have a lot to build on. I tried to give you zooming out from a 50,000 feet, what's happening in the environment and why every organization and company that I know of has got to change in order to be relevant going forward. Then I tried to zoom in and say, why for MAHA? What's out there for you that you have to be worried about? We then looked at some of the work that's been done, and you all got a chance to vote. And for the most part, you said, about a third of you said that the structure is effective, and 2/3 said not so much. In terms of the planning process, you were overwhelmingly in favor of the mission, the vision, the values, and the strategic themes. And that you are giving the executive board and the board a referendum for change. That you're expecting it and that you want it. And I think that's a very positive message going forward. What I would like to finish with, and I'm a little worried to find out what you're going to say, is evaluating the meeting. Question 1, I found the information in this meeting useful. You either strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree, and the voting is open. Well, I know they make great jewelry, but all right, so it looks like that most of you agree that the information has been useful. Okay, I appreciated having the opportunity to provide my personal feedback on MAHA board effectiveness. Strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. Polling is open. Okay, so the majority of you really appreciated this opportunity. The next question. The pace of this session was too fast, just right, too slow. Countdown. So the majority of you felt that it was just right. And the final question, and I put a caveat here, despite the technical challenges, I would rate Dottie as a presenter lousy. She needs to get a new day job. Okay, at least I did not fall asleep. Good, I learned some things. And great, I really enjoyed the session. Yes. Whoa, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Appreciate your patience with the technology and everything. Thanks for your feedback, and have a wonderful afternoon.
So So one more thing before you go. I was pretty impressed by the number of people that want to participate in helping with this process. There's no secret we've kind of struggled through some of our first initial sessions in getting everybody there that we wanted to be there, getting some of the association people there that we wanted to be there. And there's nothing against that. Maybe it just didn't work with their schedule. But I saw today that there's a lot of people here who would like to help. So you may have noticed that tomorrow afternoon from 2 to 5, there's a strategic planning next steps core group meeting. So you might think that, well, that's not for me because I'm not in the core group. Well, you are now. So you are cordially invited, anybody that wishes to help and provide their input and to keep the process moving forward, to become part of the core group and visit us tomorrow afternoon in the director's room. I don't know where that is, but I hope it's a big room. If not, we may have to move it to a little bigger room. So I appreciate everything, and thank you, Dottie.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.